The Lash Bash barbecue is this weekend, folks, and Penn State football has some important guests in attendance.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, that is right. You are Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. Football season's right around the corner. My name is Seyko. I am your host of the show, and I am joined by a special guest once again. The everydayers know him very, very well. And thanks so much for being an everydayer, folks. Or if you're new to the channel, thanks so much for checking us out. Richie Schnyderite joins us on the show once again, publisher of Penn State Rivals, Rutgers Rivals, and UConn Rivals. Richie, it's great to have you back. Lasch Bash coming up this weekend, Big Ten Media Days right around the corner. This podcast is going to go up. People are going to hopefully watch this all over Tuesday evening and then through into Wednesday so that our thoughts can be out there for Big Ten Media Days and just get an update on recruiting as a whole, because Penn State got the two big defensive linemen and now they're looking for some more edge rushers. But let's begin with the Lash Bash, because Richie, you're very familiar with this. Dylan as well, contributing over at Rivals. And when Penn State is able to come out of the dead period like this with a huge grand event, okay, the Lash Bash is nothing to bat an eye at. This is going to have a huge list of guests, very important ones. A lot of them already committed to the class of 2024, but that's important because something that we've discussed, the everydayers are familiar with, Richie, is in the fact that when Penn State has groups of players that are already very pro Penn State, this is a good recruiting bump because you get the people that are most interested in the Nittany Lions to continue to recruit these new players that are looking for a home in college football.
Yeah, no, it's huge to get all these guys on campus, and especially when there's a list of, I want to say, what am I looking at right now? 12 commitment guys, 12 committed guys already on campus, along with all these uncommitted targets. It helps. It's I know the end of the day, it's the coaching staff's job to recruit these guys, these targets and prospects, but it helps when you have a fellow high school kid that will tell you why he went to Penn State, why he committed to Penn State. So it's an ever-growing list, and it's a big one, especially for this weekend.
Yeah, there are a lot of names, and I'm not gonna list them all here, but I do want to list the ones that Penn State has committed that will be able to help the recruiting efforts. Right? You have Ethan Grunkemeyer, you have Quinton Martin, Corey Smith, so both running backs are going to be there. Luke Reynolds, who is a phenomenal prospect. Agan Boyer's coming up. Cooper Cousins doesn't have a long trip, but he's going to be there. Garrett Sexton, Donovan Harbour, basically all the big nasties coming up front for the offensive line. And then defensive linemen Xavier Gilliam, DeAndre Cook, and Malachi Williams. So those are the ones that are currently verbally committed to the class of 2024, and then some. There's still a few others. For you, it's probably not about solidifying relationships with them. They're committed. They're going to sign when National Letter of Intent Day rolls around, the early signing period at the end of the year in December. But the more important part of this is to be able to recruit maybe some other 2024 kids. It usually 2025, though. It seems like this is an event that Penn State looks a little towards the future with prospects who are in 25, 26. I mean, there's quite a few of them that people don't know a lot of their names yet. They're going to when those cycles become the present in time. But Penn State already trying to get ahead of the curve. Are there any names in particular from those following classes that you're like, Penn State can make a really good impression on them?
Yeah, so with recruiting kind of moving up more and more nowadays, it's not too crazy for these guys to be committed. Like, for example, Jaelyne Matthews, a 2025 kid, is already committed to Penn State. He'll be there this weekend too, and he's a top 150, not top 100, top 60 kid. Sorry, geez. He is a lot higher than I previously said. But yeah, so I mean, it's not insane for them to kind of push to get these kids kind of committed already, because recruiting moves up more and more each year, and along with that, you kind of want to build your class each year before this period, before even getting to training camp. So their 2024 class is pretty much done. So like you said, they're going to focus on the future. And a couple of the notable names I'm really keeping a close eye on are Bekkem Kritza. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's coming up from Miami Central. Also keep an eye on Sine. I always pronounce this one wrong. Sine DeGraffenreich out of Atlantic City High School. Okay. He's a little under the radar. He's got really good size, and I got a chance to see him twice this spring. And he's just a talented pass catcher. He's not afraid of contact whatsoever. Will go up and high point the ball. Yeah. I know they're doing a really good job with him, and this is going to be a very New Jersey heavy class for 2025, especially because they already have 2 New Jersey recruits committed in, who I said before, Jaelyne Matthews and Amari Gaines, who most likely is going to be there this weekend, working out travel arrangements currently. Add in Sinead DeGraffenwright, and then there's another one in DJ McClary, a linebacker out of Schneider High School in Jersey City. And he's a top 100, and I think he's 102 for us. So top 100 basically for the most part. But he wanted to make a late summer decision, it sounded like, and he already has a top 8. And from everything I've been told, it's basically Rutgers or Penn State because he wants to stay extremely local. So I think Penn State's in a really good spot there. And one other name I keep forgetting, I shouldn't forget this one, but Michael Carroll, who is a Penn State legacy. His dad played at Penn State. I think it was the 80s, I believe. I got to double check on that one. But we actually future casted him to end up as a Nittany Lion. And from everything it sounds like, it could happen this weekend.
Yeah, it would make sense, too, with all the festivities going on. Again, Lasch Bash coming up this weekend. Very exciting. I'm going to be there, so I'll be able to document and bring that content to all of you for Locked On Nittany Lions and Penn State rivals, HappyValleyInsider.com. Richie, if I'm looking at this list, I'm going to go out a little bit further and go to the class of 2026 just because I'm already enamored with him as a prospect. Messiah Mickens. If you want to continue that running back that RBU trend, I'm not declaring that Penn State is, but when you have Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders, Journey Brown before, of course, the health issues off the field, right? And then now Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, and Corey Smith, Quinton Martin behind him. Why not continue the trend and go get one of the best prospects in the nation? Definitely one of the best in Pennsylvania when it comes to running back position. So I like Messiah Mickens. I also like Elias Coke. I think he's just a very outstanding young man. For first and foremost, this is somebody that works very hard. This is someone who's very personable from what we've just seen with the way that he communicates with coaches and media. And I like him as a prospect as well. And Penn State can never have too many receivers, especially with Marcus Hagans in the fold. But you mentioned Jaylen Matthews. I mean, that's your headline prospect in the class of 2025. Georgia trying to see if they can peel him away, to see if they can get him and flip him. And it will be interesting because he did commit very early. But if Penn State is able to continue to chip away at this recruitment and make sure that he stays solidified in the class of 2025, it's events like this that are able to do just that. And you already said it with the quarterback and Kritza. I mean, quarterbacks are obviously the most important position in this class, in general, in the sport of football. I just got done watching the quarterback Netflix series, and it makes me think completely different about it. Peyton Manning does a really good job. But when you're looking out, and there's a lot of good quarterbacks in the class of 2025, but when you're able to get the attention of someone like Kritza, who's down in Florida, Miami Central, T.A. Cunningham's going to be attending there, the relationships being built with him, that's a good sign for Mike Yurcich and Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, just starting from the beginning of what you said, Messiah Mickens is full-fledged
freak athlete.
Like, there's just no way around it. I know we haven't ranked 2026 yet, but I'd be shocked if he wasn't a borderline 5-star or 5-star even. Yeah. He is just absolutely phenomenal as a prospect. Ty Howell's doing a great job there recruiting him, putting in a lot of effort. Every time I talk to Messiah, though, he always speaks so highly of Penn State. Always says that's home. That feels like home. And he's saying the right things. He's already taken other visits. He's taken trips to Florida, Alabama, Georgia, West Virginia, Tennessee this summer alone, along with Penn State, of course. And just to get him back on campus as many times as possible leading up to his upcoming commitment, actually, because he told us he's going to commit ahead of during his junior year. So technically, I guess he still has 2 more years, 2026. So we still have a year away until he makes a commitment. But I could see that timeline kind of getting pushed up, sort of similar to like a Jaelyne Matthews type situation where he's a 2025, but he's committing in, March, April, May? I don't even remember at this point. But it was this spring. So I could see an early commitment for him. And he's only about roughly slightly under 90 minutes from his actual hometown. So it would make a lot of sense for him to end up with Penn State. And he's already got a ton of offers. He's got all those programs I said before, along with Ohio State, Michigan State, etc. It's just they're doing such a great job there. And then Elias Coke, who you talked about too. Just good to get these kids on campus. I know they're younger. They're not ready to commit just yet, but they speak so highly of Penn State. And I mean, as long as Franklin's still in charge in 2 years, which I don't see not happening, I think they have a great shot at both of those kids. And it wouldn't shock me if both of them were, I would say Mickens is probably number 1 in Pennsylvania right now, but it wouldn't shock me if Coke was a top 5, top 10 kid in Pennsylvania too, and could end up in Nittany Lion as well.
Yeah, very talented prospects. You can never start too early, especially in this day and age of NIL.
Yes.
Penn State has to recruit this way. I mean, Penn State has a very good NIL presence, but I'm being honest, it's still not Georgia, Florida, Tennessee. What do all these schools have in common, Richie? They're all SEC schools. So until Penn State is able to match the SEC, and the SEC is not going to let up, they're not going to let any wiggle room. But Penn State, I think, is doing a good job with the resources that they have in NIL, coupled with the way that James Franklin and the staff recruit. It's very telling, and you're seeing the dividends. The fact that Penn State doesn't have to throw money, dollar signs at these players, and they're still able to get as much talent and as many quality people. These are quality human beings. You're getting some of the most mature athletes across the nation to come to Penn State on top of that. And I think that's just very telling with what they were able to do, given that, well, we're not going to throw hundreds of millions of dollars at all these different players in one single class, unlike some other places. And we've noticed that it hasn't exactly worked out. Texas A&M, maybe they proved me wrong in 2023. Richie, let's talk about some upcoming commitments that are potential for the class of 2024, even as important as a Lasch Bash is, which is why I wanted to highlight it to open up the show. When we get into segment 2, we're going to talk about all that. I do want to thank our sponsor of today's show, and that is eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every single player is a perfect fit. And it's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head over to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to my garage, look for the green check to know that your part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts, that is right, 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts for the right fit and the right prices, all on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. And Locked On Nittany Lions is your go-to podcast for HappyValleyInsider.com. Check out the latest at HappyValleyInsider.com when it comes to recruiting, the football previews with Big Ten Media Days. We're talking about that in the final segment. Camp coming up. Richie, of course, you're the publisher over there. HappyValleyInsider.com. Dylan Callaghan-Crowley, a strong contributor, the recruiting analyst for the site. Richie, what can people expect with the content that's going to be over on Penn State Rivals?
I mean, like you just said, Big Ten Media Days coming up. We're going to have a ton of content. We're going to have people there live recording videos, articles, audio. We'll transcribe in articles and all that good stuff. They don't really say much, to be honest, at these media days. It's a lot of coach speak, which I get it. Some fans want to just read what Franklin says, but I don't expect them to really come out and say, hey, we're making the playoff this year or anything like that. Now, that being said, the media poll, I guess there technically isn't a sanctioned media poll for the Big Ten, which is weird in the first place. But there is one ran by Cleveland.com. It had Penn State finishing 3rd in the Big Ten East. Personally, don't see it, but they did have 2 first-place votes. Other than that, people selected Michigan and Ohio State over them. Again, I don't think that happens, but we're going to have a ton of content on the site at pennstate.rivals.com, on Twitter at Penn State Rivals, where I guess it's X now, maybe not Twitter. I don't know what you call it, but we also have Instagram, we have Threads, we have all that good stuff. I'm tired of downloading new apps, though. It's getting a little ridiculous at this point, but anything at Penn State Rivals, we will have all kinds of content from players to coach interviews, et cetera, et cetera. Anything Penn State related will be on our website.
So stay connected with them. Stay connected with us at Locked On Nittany and at Zach_Seyko. And of course, Richie's personal X account as well. So let's go back to the recruiting aspect of it. And we'll talk more about the Big Ten Media Days, but that's simply put, really, I don't know that I had much different than that, but we'll break it down. Jaylen Harvey seems to be like the next one to commit. If you go to HappyValleyInsider.com right now, you'll notice that the future casts, the only one that's there is for Jaylen Harvey, and then there is Michael Carroll for the class of 2025, but 2024. taking the precedent because now it's in the present, and Penn State doing a phenomenal job getting the defensive linemen that they needed. They set out a goal. They said, hey, we're going to continue to bolster the secondary, beef up the offensive line, get our 2 running backs, get our quarterback. There was this debate if they were going to take 1 or 2, but still getting Ethan Grunkemeyer is still a win for the class of 2024 for Penn State. And now it was about playing catch up with wide receiver and defensive line. You got 4 defensive tackles, Caleb Brewer potentially playing either offensive line, defensive line, whatever we see in the future for him. But it looks like he's going to project at the offense at least to start. But you potentially have 5 defensive tackles in this class. You got Liam Andrews and T.A. Cunningham. Cunningham, who was a former top 10 prospect in the nation once upon a time. Yeah. Liam Andrews, who is just a pure athlete, could play O-line, D-line. And now you need to add to the exterior. So forget the interior for a second. Folks, you got the size you wanted at DT. But now it's about focusing on the speed at the edge rusher position. You have Malachi Williams, who was very high up on Penn State's big board. Richie, this is a matter of trying to reset the big board for Penn State from what you understand of who they're still targeting in this class of 2024. Jaylen Harvey, let's start there. I'm confident that he will be the next one to commit just based on the future cast. I mean, there's really no one else. I mean, Penn State is recruiting guys like Hardly Gilmore the 4th, but they're really, normally you have kind of the signs pointing in one direction or another. And people know, if you follow along with this show and Happy Valley Insider, that you're going to get the inside track on who Penn State's going to land as far as a commitment.
Yeah, so we've been on Jaylen Harvey for quite some time now. I actually future casted him to go to Penn State back on, I'm looking now, October 18th, 2022. So
years. We're talking years.
It's been a while. Every time he goes to campus, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the week. And it's like, I want to say he's taken 6 visits to campus. So I was pretty close since that future cast. So it's like, I really thought it would have happened by now. I don't know if he's not going to be there this weekend. Could change, obviously. Yeah. But I do expect him to still go to Penn State. I still haven't projected to go to Penn State now. There's some funny business going on in his recruitment. Some other schools are starting to throw little numbers out there, whether they write it in public or they don't ever show anyone, obviously. It's never written on pen to paper. It's always just like, hey, we'll throw this number out, see if he'll be interested. I know his camp is definitely very interested in NIL. That's the big issue. That was the big hiccup that hasn't led to his commitment yet. I know USC is very heavily involved. Some people in his camp are from California. He actually ran on the 7-on-7 squad from California. So it's a little weird situation there, how he got involved with them and stuff. But then there's Maryland, who's down the street from him, pushing the whole stay home thing. Rumor is they're also throwing some significant NIL at him too. Do they have much? No, but they might just waste it all on one kid. So it's crazy how this world works now. Florida's pretty much in the background, but everything we've been told is that Penn State is still in the lead. Whether it was in the lead 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I'd probably argue they weren't. But it's just been kind of a roller coaster for the most part. I know it's a cliche that everyone uses, but that's exactly what this one's been. It's been Penn State the whole way. Then there was a big drop off a couple weeks ago, and then it was right back up to Penn State again. So I do think they have a very good shot. Now, he doesn't have a commitment date yet, but I could see it happening, honestly, any day. It's up to him whenever he feels right and feels the school is the right spot for him. He could just go on social media, whether it be X or Twitter, and go commit.
Yeah, make sure. I don't even know what you're tweeting. I don't know what you Xing. I don't know what you call it. But yeah, it's called X now, everybody. And Jaylen Harvey is an important commitment because, like Liam Andrews, like Malachi Williams, Jaylen Harvey was essentially, I want to go with Liam Andrews was the number 1 on the big board. And then you look at it, and 2A, 2B was Malachi Williams and Jaylen Harvey. I don't know who was the A, who was the B, but they were very important to a point that they were always next. And Penn State doesn't want to get one. They want to get both. Richie, is there anybody else in your mind at this point that Penn State's going to try to land for the class of 2024? I know some things could surprise us down the road. And this was something I talked about in the episode from yesterday. The Everydayers saw this and listened to it. And I know that when it comes to recruiting, this isn't over. Don't think, well, because the summer, the football season starts. There's going to be some guys that emerge over the course of their senior year. Some guys that Penn State was heavily targeting, and then they were waiting to take their decision. I'm not even talking about a Nigel Smith and a Brian Robinson necessarily. Those are two high-end defensive end recruits that are getting national recognition from everywhere, right? National. But at the same time, there's going to be guys that emerge in Pennsylvania. There's going to be guys that emerge in the DMV, whether it's Massachusetts seems to be like a popular recruiting ground for Penn State at this point with all the guys that they continue to land. And I think there's going to be some players that were either unranked or low 3-stars that will have a good senior campaign and honestly sign in or make their decision come late November, early December, and be those that 26, 27, because right now they're at 24. So I don't anticipate Penn State taking 5, 6, 7 more prospects. It's really going to get narrowed down to Jaylen Harvey and then maybe a few other names. I'm confident they could flip somebody like a Rico Scott, who just doesn't make sense to me down in Alabama. Really good player, but going outside of the area like that, and Alabama continues to keep stacking some prospects as well. So I wonder if it gets a little too crowded. And Penn State, with only 3 wide receivers at this point in time, does it make sense like Tysier Denmark, who flips away from Oregon, is the same thing setting up for someone like Rico Scott to flip back to Penn State and where he's from?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. From what I was told recently, actually, in regards to Rico Scott, is that Alabama wouldn't push like too much. If they if someone wanted to flip him, they'd kind of just be like, it's okay. We have other guys. It's not a big deal. So
okay,
that might be one to keep an eye on. Obviously, Hardly Gilmore, you talked about before. He was a 2025, reclassed to 2024 in the middle of summer, and then all of a sudden took a visit to Kentucky. That kind of tells you where he's leaning towards. He just released the top 3. I think it was Kentucky, Penn State, and I forget the third one.
UCF.
Yeah, I don't understand that one either. But hey, they are Power 5 now, so who knows?
But, Big 12.
Yeah, that is still a conference for now. But yeah, it sounds like he's probably going to go to Kentucky. I do expect them to get one more receiver because they are pushing people. Like they're still pushing for Jalen Hornsby, who's committed to Texas A&M. I know they're very active with him. They want a 4th receiver to join Denmark, Josiah Brown, and Peter Gonzalez. And Hornsby, honestly, would be a pretty good fit. Another name, Alex Taylor's expected to make a decision at the end of this month. I think he's down to, Clemson, North Carolina State, and Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
So, and obviously Penn State too. So, we'll see what he ends up doing. Although, again, I think he stays in the Carolinas. You kind of get that hint, especially when you have 3 Carolina schools in your top 5. So,
yeah, he's from there.
Yeah, make a lot of sense there. And then they want one more offensive lineman too. There's not a ton of names out there. I know Gerby Lambert is the one that everyone wants to talk about because he's the high 4-star big name guy. Is it possible to get him? Sure. I'm not going to say it's not, but it just seems sort of unlikely. I think he's actually number 62 in the country for us. And then there's DeAndre Carter, who's out of California. He's 78 in the country for us. He's just a one to really keep an eye on, but it doesn't seem like they have too much interest in Penn State recently with either of those guys. Maybe someone else, like you said, ends up 3 games in, they end up shining a little bit, and it's like, oh, look at that guy. And I like to use that comparison to Chim Diona, where he was a nobody. No one knew who he was. No one even thought he was a Power 5 kid. Then all of a sudden, November hits, and he had 10 Power 5 offers. And it's like, okay, well, there you go. So I would say they probably finish with 26. I would say just because they're going to get a receiver, I would think. And they'll probably add Harvey, I would say, to be hypothetical. And that would be 26. And you go into that senior year and save some spots for late bloomers and high school kids, or even just go straight to portal. The portal is going to be active again, and it's going to start in December. We're not even once that starts up again, it's going to be the wild, wild west once all over again.
And I'll finish with this because you bring up the transfer portal. Penn State's plan is to build and stack the recruiting classes for high school to build the foundation. And then you go get pieces out of the transfer portal where you're weak. Not like a Michigan State where you're like, all right, we're just going to put a free agent class together and see how it all meshes when these are college kids. These are college young men trying to figure it all out. It's different in the NFL when it becomes your living. But these are people that never played together before, don't really have that exact chemistry. And Penn State's going with that. They're going to say, we're going to invest in high school recruiting. We're going to make sure that's still our strong suit, and then go get the complementary parts, whether it's an Arnold Ebiketie, a Dante Cephas this year, right? Guys who can come in and complement the team and put them over the top, hopefully. So, but let's finish with that there, Richie, pivoting to the final segment here. Big Ten Media Days. Okay, this is going to be short because, like you said, I understand the point of it, right? This is kind of the event, the holiday, if you will, to look towards and say, okay, college football season's right around the corner. I know that Pac-12 Media Days, Pac-8, whatever they are at this point in time, with all the schools that are running left and right away from the league. The Big 12 just had Media Days, the SEC. And now the Big Ten over the course of Wednesday, July 26th and Thursday, July 27th. Penn State's going to go up Wednesday, July 26th at 12:15. I think I have that right. And James Franklin's going to speak. They're going to take out Olu Fashanu, Adisa Isaac, and I think I'm missing one more player. Keaton Ellis. Keaton Ellis is the other one. So they're taking three of the seniors, probably, or three of the captains, if you will. Olu Fashanu is still technically not a senior, but I think academically he could have graduated, and he's working on his master's, but he decided to come back. And this is a solid group. You are getting the best players right now on the roster to represent Penn State at Big Ten Media Days, but they're not going to say anything that is going to tip their hand, right? You don't want to give anything to the opponent, telling them about, like, well, here, this is an upcoming player that we're really excited about. He's going to be a big part of our game plan. Why would you tell the public that? Why would you give not necessarily bulletin board material, but a blueprint for schools to say, okay, well, now we got a key on so-and-so, and we can't let him sneak up on us?
Yeah. Well, the nice thing for Penn State is there's I shouldn't say there's no one starting to shine a little bit. It's just like everyone knows who the big names are already.
Yeah.
Everyone knows.
You don't have to hide it. You can't really hide anything.
Yeah, you can't hide it when you're that big a name of a program, especially when it's like, hey, Drew Allard, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Dante Cephas, everyone has tape on. Fashanu, you were just saying, Adisa Isaac, Abdul Carter. I could keep going. Everyone knows who these people are, and they know what they're good at. So it's not like they're going to say too much there. There are a couple questions I would definitely want to get answers to. Like, I would say, how's the relationship between Franklin and Kraft going? I know that they're talked about renovating some stuff, maybe redoing some more stuff at Beaver Stadium, which would be nice. Also, how's the NIL situation working? I know it's clear as day. It was a pretty bad struggle. I want to say, a year ago, maybe at this point?
Yeah.
And it's taken a quick 180, and they've gotten a lot better. They've merged collectives. They've done all that. You see them being more active with events. I know you were at the Weiss Supermarket the other day for the one event. There's all kinds of other crazy things. I think they're actually going over in my territory in Avalon Beach Thursday for We Are at the Beach event, which is kind of cool. Working on probably end up going there for that. And then just kind of see what the status is. I know you don't have to give out numbers and give out financial reports, but just what is the status of the new look NIL situation at Penn State? I think that's a major one. You could talk about the captains, but again, that's just coach speak too. Yeah. I think DeLuca got named captain too, other than the other two that are already going to Big Ten Media's Days, and Fashanu and Keaton Ellis. And then the last thing I'd probably ask about is probably just the Big Ten schedule in general. It's completely different starting next year. There's no more divisions. Everyone has a protected rival, but Penn State. I would probably kind of pick Franklin's brain a little bit and be like, why do you think that is? Do you guys think you're going to get one when UCLA and USC come in, or what's the scoop here? Are you guys just going to wait for them to add Notre Dame and make that a protected rival? Yeah. What is this? What was the deal with that? Especially when you have technically the greatest trophy game ever made in the, what do you call it? I can't even talk today, in the Minnesota game. So
yeah,
it's a lot of interesting questions for him, but I don't think it's anything significant. Like you said, he's not going to say a whole lot. It's going to be a lot of coach speak. You don't give away any tips of the trade or anything like that. I know personally, after talking to coaches this offseason, both on and off the record, they've told me so many times, you never really realize how much their scouts and their scouting department actually goes on YouTube and just watches to see their reactions when someone asks a question about player X or player Y. And it's actually really interesting to find out more and more about that. But they watch every YouTube video possible, whether it's me or you recording Franklin's press conference, and they see a little snap in the background, and it's like, oh, who just caught that ball? And then they'll just go look it up, and then they'll go tell their coach or vice versa. And it's very intriguing how scouting works. So they're not going to reveal much, I don't think, this week.
No. Yeah, you stay very close to the vest. As the Big Ten in general, 2024, you want to at least get insight to that because USC, UCLA coming in. But until that actually happens, that's not going to be necessarily the storyline. But I think it's important to have those questions asked, Richie. I completely agree with you. Just as far as if we're talking about the fan, the college football community, no one's really going to care. Nobody is going to care. You are going to get questions about Drew Aller and everything else. That's pretty standard. But you're going to get the coach speak answer. What does James Franklin have to say that people don't really know about Drew Aller already? And he's not going to again. Well, here's a list of his biggest weaknesses and his biggest fears. Why don't you have that? That's not going to happen. Okay.
No.
Everything's going to be positive. It's going to be a public relations standpoint. And I like Big Ten Media Days. It's interesting. I don't get the opportunity this time around to go and be there in person, but it'd be quite an experience. And I know that the people covering it are going to love it. But at the end of the day, you're just not going to get. Hopefully, he does say something that is intriguing. Same with the players. Hopefully, they do say something that is able to not only help drive some content for us, but just in general, a conversation. Right? I want to be able to have conversations about this, but I'm not putting too much stock that we're going to get some fiery or spicy comment from really anybody from the Big Ten, not just Penn State.
Yeah, no, that's pretty spot on. Everyone in the Big Ten is actually pretty good with not trash talking. I know it sounds dumb to say out loud, but like this conference just doesn't trash talk each other. Now you go to SEC Media Day, they're probably all saying like, I hate Saban. You saw Kiffin actually say it. He's like, you guys are just like, you're giving him fuel. Like he's just going to do it all over again. But they really don't talk about each other that much, which I find interesting, especially because you have one of the probably the biggest rivalry in college football ever in Ohio State and Michigan. And they don't say really a word to each other at days like this. But I think this event is mostly for national media now because it's for people that don't know who Drew Aller is. And they're going to be like, what stands out about Drew Aller? And Franklin's going to be like, hey, well, he was the number 4-star, 5-star, number XXX in the class. He was one of the greatest recruits I've ever landed since I've been here. Yada, yada, yada. Throws the ball far. Yeah, we know. Like that's why for local media, it's kind of I don't want to say it's pointless, but like we don't learn much because we see it all the time. We already talked to him about Drew Aller in spring and all that. So it's not anything different from what we've heard. And like I said, it's more for a national media perspective.
Richie, very well put. And I think we should finish there. So hopefully those commitments continue to come in. Lash Bash is going to be a lot of fun. Excited to be there on behalf of the podcast and on behalf of Happy Valley Insider. And then we'll see what happens with Big Ten Media Days coming up here, Penn State, going live Wednesday, July 26th at 12:15 Eastern Time. Richie, thanks for the time. Can't wait to have you back on. And hopefully Harvey commits soon, and maybe Penn State can get some under the radar name to join the class of 2024. And maybe the class of 2025 gets another commit as well.
There you go. Thanks for having me, Zach. And I would stay tuned to our message boards this weekend. I have a feeling something big is going to happen.
Hey, thanks so much for checking out this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. If you enjoyed it, like the episode, share it with your friends and family, comment any and all feedback, what you think about the Lash Bash this upcoming weekend, Big Ten Media Day, and become an everydayer. Support the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel, or follow along wherever you get your podcasts.